for now, let's give a big warm welcome, a big applause, big hand for Andrew.
Thank you. No, that's not my dog. That's not mine. Mine's purple. There we go. Okay, cool. Cool. Man, I just want to say thank you very much for having me, and I'm actually super bummed that I wasn't able to attend in person and see you all in person. I was really excited to come in April and visit your beautiful, well, what I hear is a beautiful city. So yeah, I hope your cake is good, and I hope your coffee is good. I have my 85% chocolate here in the place of cake. So yeah. Well, anyways, I'm here to talk about what I'm calling realizing Relé. It's a story about Google PubSub, Python, and a bit of Power. I think everybody enjoys Power, so I thought that was cool. A bit about me. My name is Andrew Graham Yooll. I'm a software engineer at Mercadona Tech. Mercadona is the largest supermarket chain in Spain, and we are the tech portion of that. So we handle e-commerce and all the supply chain and logistics software and products that we build and maintain. Just on the side, since this is a Django conference, I'm also a Django import-export maintainer. So if you have any questions about any of this or Django import-export, hit me up on Twitter, or I'm pretty active on GitHub as well. So yeah, I would like to talk to you guys about the problem that we had, the solution that we finally came up with, and at the end, if we're lucky, a release. So cross my fingers. But before we get started, I think it's important to kind of define what PubSub is. So this is something I took from the web, and basically, as defined, it's an asynchronous messaging service that decouples services that produce events from services that process events. Now that might sound crazy to you, or like not. You might not understand that fully, but that's okay. The kind of important things here are asynchronous, decoupling, and events. That's kind of just what we have to keep in mind when we go through this talk. And I hope by the end of this talk, you'll actually understand what PubSub is. So I'm just going to go through a problem that we had. This is the actual problem that we have, and why we came to the solution that we came up with. So since we're like an e-commerce platform, every e-commerce platform has a catalog of products. In our case, we have a catalog. It was an API. It had 7,000 products. And every day it ranges between 7,000 to 8,000, depending on the season, what's in stock, what's not in stock, etc. And then again, we have like different services. So we have a service-oriented architecture. In an e-commerce platform, we had a store API, and we also have a logistics API. And each of these services, they both need products. So they both need the 7,000 products every single day, and they need it very accurately. So we have an HTTP REST API, which would go and fetch all the products every single day to each of these services. Now, there are some problems with this. One of them is scalability, which we'll talk about in a second. Another is resiliency, and another is time to recovery. These were kind of like the three main points that we were feeling, pain points. So scalability. Now, okay, we take the same catalog API with 7,000 products. We do these GET requests for these 7,000 products in 2 different services. And in the end, you're going to have somewhere around 14,000 API calls. Now, that's not a lot. Like, we can handle that, no problem. But the problem becomes when you have like other services that pop up. So we have a supply service, which does another request for 7,000 products. And that's a total of 21,000 API calls in total. And then you add another service, let's say whatever service, multiply that by infinity, basically, and you have like the number of API calls get out of hand very quickly. So that is one one sticking point in scalability with this type of architecture. We also have the problem of resiliency. So before, with our catalog, we had a process that ran about 50 minutes. And what this would do is that the 50-minute process would import all the products to the shop. Now, what happens if at 49 minutes, you have like a timeout error and your entire process needs to be restarted? Well, what happens is that you have to restart the entire 50-minute process, and you've just wasted about an hour and a half of time. Now, okay, you might say like this is all right for, okay, you just push another button, you start the import process again, you may have to restart a cron job, whatever. But it actually becomes like a really serious issue for us since we're in the supermarket industry. Say, for instance, if we had like, I don't know, some recall on milk, and we unpublished in the catalog the recall of milk. Well, we want to see immediately in the shop that customers cannot add this milk anymore. And in order to wait 50 minutes to guarantee that they cannot see this milk is kind of unacceptable. So we really wanted to figure out a solution to this problem. And as a group of engineers, we kind of sat down and we brainstormed a bit, and we came up with the solution that we wanted, like an event-driven architecture, some sort of event-driven architecture in our system. And what that kind of looks like is that you have this catalog service, which publishes to a broker, which is in the middle here. And then in other services, they can like subscribe to this broker. So in our classic case of the product, it would publish some sort of product updated event, go to the broker, and then from their services, you can pull this information from your broker. And this can scale up to however many services you want. What is important to note about this is that you are decoupling the catalog from all the other services. So as a developer on the catalog API or catalog service, you only care about publishing to the broker. You don't care about how many services are actually using that data in their actual service. So for instance, like, yeah, like if you were to use like a classic API and you would have 28,000 API calls, you would have to worry about scaling at a certain time, or my pods like scaling to, you know, X amount. You have to worry about that kind of stuff. With publishing, you just care about publishing, and it's up to the services that are pulling that data from broker to they're the ones responsible for getting that data from the broker. So this broker, this famous broker, we kind of brainstormed a bit as well, like what technology should we use? We thought about Kafka, which is like the famous like event platform. We decided against it. There was also, Amazon has their own solution called SNS. There's also Redis PubSub, and there's also RabbitMQ. In the end, actually, though, we decided on Google PubSub. We decided on Google PubSub because it's super cheap, and highly scalable. When I say cheap, I mean like you can publish like 1 million messages for free every month, and then after the 1 million messages, you pay something like $40 or something like that per month. So it's really cheap and scalable and reliant and all these things that we were looking for. Yeah. So in the end, this is kind of what our ecosystem looks like with that broker. Now, before I continue, I just want to go over a couple concepts, which I think I've mentioned, but I didn't really define. One of these things is like, what is a topic? A topic is just basically a queue. It lives inside the broker, and it houses all the messages. The publisher is the entity which pushes the data to the topic. So its responsibility is getting that data to the broker. And then the subscription is basically just a callback function, and its responsibility is pulling that data from the broker. From the broker that has been published from the publisher. These are quite important topics. Okay, so we got this Google PubSub system working in production or staging, whatever. And we were super excited about it. It was really simple to set up. You just literally just push a button on Google Cloud Console, and you have it up and running. And we're like, this is awesome. So naturally, as software engineers, we went to the Google library, and they have a Python library. We said, this is really cool. Like, let's try to use this. The only problem is that like we ran into some serious issues when we tried it out, and we were experimenting and doing spikes and seeing how it would perform in production. One of the biggest things that we saw was an issue of memory leaks and also thread management. The Google library does some like weird stuff with threads. They spawn like 10 threads for every process, for every subscription that you have, which caused like memory CPU to just skyrocket, and our pods were being killed, and our application was being killed, and yeah, it just was pretty nerve-wracking to see that happening. So we were like, oh, like what's going on here? Finally, there was also the issue of the database connections. So one thing we take for granted when using something like, let's say, Celery or Dramatic, is that those libraries are actually creating and cutting off connections to your database. And so the Google Python PubSub library doesn't handle any of that for you. So you kind of have to like hack it away and cut connections and create connections with your database and manage that. So at one point in production, I think we saw all the connections, all the threads, or I should say all the connections to the database being used up to our Postgres database. And I think it took down production. It definitely took down staging at one point. So it was kind of nerve-wracking as well to see that happening. Luckily, nothing really came of that, but we learned a big lesson from that. And then like one of the things we wanted, or one of the things that we were missing from the Google PubSub library were how do we handle failures properly? So they have like these like demo example code stuff on Google, and it kind of shows you a little bit like how to handle failures, but it really wasn't like production ready, to be honest. And if we were, and like in a distributed architecture, you're always going to have failures, so you always have to be able to handle those in a proper way. And in the end, this all just boils down to like a terrible developer experience. I mean, we spent 2 or 3 weeks trying to figure out these problems and trying to fix them, and we realized that, okay, like we have this PubSub like system sitting there, ready to accept messages and subscriptions, but it really was not production ready. And especially if we have like many services that are going to use this thing, we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every single time we deploy it to production. So that was like something that we really wanted to solve. It was very important to us. So in the end, we created a project. The project is called Relé. This Relé project is basically just like a collection of all of our learnings with Google PubSub. And yeah, we put it there. It's our first open source project as a tech team, and we're really excited to share it with the world. So I included this map. I don't expect you all to read this. It's pretty illegible to me, but basically what's interesting about this is that the top here, the top blue circle is basically the e-commerce site, and you can see all the arms stemming from it, like an octopus. And that's basically all the publications and subscriptions that are going to all the different services that we have in our ecosystem. Actually, this isn't all of them, it's just a subset of them, but you can kind of get the point that like all these threads, all these publications and subscriptions going to each one of the services is doing something. So it's super, it's a big project in our team, and lots of systems are using it. And again, just this is a bit more like zoomed in a bit. Basically, you would have like a shop, which when you click confirm on your order, it then publishes to a topic, and other services that are concerned with this order receive this order data. So like our last mile delivery team wants to know which orders to deliver. Our fraud team wants to know which orders, is this order a fraud or not, and mark it as fraud if so. And then supply, because they need to know how much they're going to sell tonight. So they're concerned with that as well. So Relé, I think, has some cool features that I want to point out. One of them is, well, we're at a Django conference, and Django, we are a Django team. All of our services basically run on Django or pure Python. And yeah, we developed Relé as a Django application first. Then later we added Flask support and then pure Python support. So yeah, Django was like the first class citizen, if you will, of this project. Another thing that we introduced in this project, which I think is really powerful, is called Middleware Hooks. And basically what this allows you to do is plug into the entire lifecycle of Relé. We include Python logging out of the box, and we also include Prometheus metrics out of the box as well. And I think the Prometheus metrics are really powerful as well. It allows you to do cool things like show product, like what's going on in your system at any given time. So I pulled this yesterday from one of our Grafana graphs, and it's basically just showing you all the order arrived events that are being delivered at that moment. So it's kind of cool. You can see how your system is performing and how events in real life are actually being used on your system. Yeah, so Relé API. So we came at this whole project from a developer experience point of view because we knew that the Python PubSub library from Google really was not good or production ready. So we really wanted to make the developer experience as good as possible. So we make publishing super easy to do. You just tell it a topic and then you publish data in JSON valid form. So like a regular Python dictionary. And then to subscribe or to receive that data, you just decorate a function, which is your callback basically. And you just pass the decorator your topic name, and then you do whatever you want with that data. And that's it. It's super straightforward. And also we have been using a Celery in some of our services. So we wanted the API to be a bit like Celery. And we also took a lot of, we also were influenced heavily by Dramatic, another library. So yeah, if you're used to these two libraries, you'll be kind of used to Relé. And one question I get a lot is how production ready is Relé? Because if this is going to be an integral part of your architecture, you really want to know if it's production ready or not. I think it is. And for the past year, we've been managing 136 topics with Relé. Would be about 300. Well, we have 317 subscriptions being managed by Relé as well. I checked yesterday, and over the past 30 days, we've published over 20 million messages successfully in our system. And we've consumed over 125 million messages successfully in the past 30 days. So I think it's quite production ready. And when I was writing this talk, I kind of came up with the name Realizing Relé, but then a couple of days ago, I was talking to a colleague, and I was like, "Oh man, we should really call it Releasing Relé." And I think that's because during this talk, we actually released Relé 1.0 because we really believe that it's production ready. So yeah, I think on PyPy right now, you should be able to see that 1.0 is actually published. And that's Relé released. If you have any questions or comments or want to contribute somehow, you can always visit our repository at Mercadona Relé. And then I put Hacktoberfest in here because October is a couple days away. And we hope to be tagging some issues on the repository with Hacktoberfest. And that's so that the community can help contribute, or if they have any questions, you can find us on GitHub. And that's about it. Not sure how much time I used. There we go. Okay. Oh. Nope.
That's what happened.
We are live.
Now you can hear me. All right.
Now I can.
So just gearing up here to see. Oh, yes. Questions from the internet.
Oh, cool.
are not on my screen. They're coming on my screen now. Okay, great. So first question is from Joel. He asks, what is the Django ecosystem like in Spain?
Well, we have Python ES. We have Django. I'm not sure if we actually have Django. I'm in Valencia, so I should say I'm in Valencia. I don't know much about the ecosystems in Madrid or Barcelona, the bigger cities. But the Django ecosystem here in Valencia, I would say, is probably not the biggest, but it's not that bad. Like, I think we are actually the biggest Django shop in Valencia. In the greater Spain area, I know it's quite big. We have Django Girls meetups a couple times a year. I think this Friday, actually, we're doing a Django meetup online for Django Girls ES. And yeah, I think it's growing. I hope it's growing, and I know the Python community is growing in Spain. And yeah, I hope Django grows.
These are exciting times in the sense that we connect our communities in a new way than before.
Yeah, exactly.
I just need to switch my see. There are no questions popping up here. Okay. You'll be with us on Zulip, I hope, if there's any more questions.
Yeah, I'll be there. No problem.
Oh, I'm being told there are questions. I just have to look.
Have a look under that one. And maybe.
All right. Cool. Yes, there are questions. So, do you know if there's any other providers of SubPub than Google Cloud, and if there is a particular reason why you picked Google Cloud for this?
Yeah, so there are many like event streaming systems. Like Kafka is the biggest one. I think I said Amazon has its own provider. I'm sure there are a lot of cloud providers out there that provide their own managed solution. There's also open source, like Redis provides a PubSub system, and RabbitMQ is like your classic PubSub system. But yeah, we decided on Google because A, it was like the simplest to set up. Like we run on Google Cloud, so it's literally just a click of a button. But then also, again, like I said, it's super cheap to run. I have my own instance that I have personally, and I don't even come anywhere close to hitting the limits. And you can do really cool stuff with it, and it's really reliant. We haven't had any issues with it so far. Yeah, the service has been really good that we've had.
Cool. And on a related note, like when is it good to start using Relé? Is it already in like the prototype hobby phase, or is it when I have an enterprise system with thousands of items in the store?
It depends. Like we had a full production system up and running with many services, and we introduced Relé only a year ago, and it's actually been very smooth to move from what we had before to what we have now, which is more of a PubSub based system. Of course, there's going to be like things that you're going to have to watch out for, but those things are just natural when you're migrating system from one to the other. I would point out though that like you could probably start using it pretty early on in a project. I'd be hesitant to like say, yes, you should start out with this early on in a project, because to use such like a big system in early project probably is not the most lean thing to do. But it actually is like, we've actually replaced Celery in some of our projects with PubSub, just publishing and then subscribing to the same topic and the same application. And it's actually worked out really well for us. So I would say if you have Celery in your project, you can probably replace it with Google PubSub. Yeah.
Which is probably a setup that people are familiar with.
Yeah, exactly.
Easy to comprehend where to use it.
Exactly.
Any other questions? Yes, there is one. Do you monitor performance and health of PubSub? Should you do it separately? Can it receive data and is data sent out? So yeah, I guess the question is about monitoring the performance and health of PubSub. Is that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Yeah, we do monitor health and performance of PubSub. Google provides metrics to monitor PubSub and how many, let's say, like how many messages you're publishing to PubSub, how many messages you're acknowledging from PubSub, and it publishes those metrics publicly to us. And you can also monitor it not directly through Google, but you can monitor it through your application metrics as well. But the only thing, yeah, is like it's a managed service by Google, so we can't see exactly, how many CPUs our Google PubSub instance is running on, or we can't scale it up or down really. We just kind of trust that Google does the right thing with our PubSub instance.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Your sound was brilliant. Your video was brilliant, and I can tell you that perhaps I haven't been so good at sharing this all day, but there's people sitting around on tables here in Copenhagen. Not so many because we can't be a giant event. But it's been exciting to have you here with us, and let's keep this up and connect in the future.
Hey, thank you very much, and I hope to make it there someday.
All right. Getting ready for the next speaker, but let's give Andrew a big warm hand.